Hello folks, I'm Dan, the editor of this magazine here, which is Wargames Illustrated, and I'm going to take you on an editor's tour of the latest issue, which is Wi407, the November 2021 issue of the magazine. The first thing to point out is exactly what it says here in the top right hand corner, which is you get a free how-to modelling guide. This is the how-to modelling guide number 4. Over previous years, we've given you issue 1 of the modelling guide, we've given you issue 2 of the modelling guide. That was followed up by, guess what, issue 3 of the modelling guide. In the latest magazine, you get number 4. Now with number 4, we're continuing the theme of reprinting articles that have appeared in Wargames Illustrated in the past, but giving you a handy, complete guide to having everything together. By the time we get to how-to number 75, you'll have every modelling article that's been printed in Wargames Illustrated ever. Actually, we don't know how we're going to keep on going, but as long as we've got quality material, we'll keep giving it away free as a supplement in the magazine. So that's how-to modelling guide number 4 that you get with this issue of the magazine. Let's take a look inside the magazine proper. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is on page 4, the subscriptions page. If you look down at the bottom here, you'll see a big picture of the Ironheart Artisans logo. Ironheart Artisans are our good friends in the USA who we've teamed up with, and they're going to be offering direct subscriptions to US subscribers from within the USA. So rather than waiting for weeks and weeks for your magazine to arrive from the UK, you can order a subscription direct from Ironheart Artisans. They'll send it direct from the USA and you'll get it in a snip of the time that you've had it previously. Right, let's get into the magazine content, and we're going to start with Quickfire. Quickfire is one of our regular features in the magazine in which you, the wargaming public, tell us about the projects you've been working on over the last few weeks and months. And we've got a lovely one here from Rob Gilmore, who supplied us with some ace photographs of his Stargrave collection. And one of the particularly interesting things here is the way that he's used the COVID-19 home testing kit as a backdrop in his Stargrave games, which is fantastic. We've got something there about using risk figures in campaigns. Then we've got a report on a recent Bill Hooks bash. It's great to see all you wargamers, like these lot, back out playing wargames again in a sort of friendly, competitive fashion. And we've got a report there on a Bill Hooks batch, which was, never mind the Bill Hooks, played in Derby fairly recently. So yeah, good to hear about people being back out on wargaming in groups together again. Observation Post is another regular feature that we have in the magazine in which we look at new and forthcoming games, supplements, figures, etc. We're taking a look at the Lion Rampant supplement, A Viking in the Sun. We've also got a look at Pony Wars set of rules, and we take an in-depth look at Clockwork Goblins 15mm Conflict 47 figures, including some very nice modelling tips from our in-house modeller, Mark, who tells you a bit about how he went about painting his 15mm Conflict 47 figures. Another regular up next, Release Radar, in which our good friend Dom Saw tells us about some of the more obscure releases within the hobby over the last month, pointing your attention to things that you might have missed. I won't spoil that by telling you what those things are. And then we finish our regular features with Full Paper Jacket. Neil Smith, our bookworm, tells us all about what books you, the wargamer, should be buying and getting onto your shelf. Another thing, before we get into the main meat of the articles that I want to point out, is the Wargames Illustrated Awards 2021. Right, go online soon, because we've not set it up quite yet, but go online soon to vote for your favourites in such categories as the best wargames rules, the best miniature manufacturer, the best range of miniatures, the best terrain manufacturer, all those usual things. We have 8 different categories that you can go along and vote for. And no, we've not already decided that these people are going to win, even though we did put 2021 on there. We probably should have put 2020, because that's telling you who won last year. Go online, vote for your favourite, make sure that your voice is heard in the 2021 Wargames Illustrated Awards. Right, our first article of our theme for this month, which is Wargames Workbench, all about modelling and painting and all that kind of good stuff that you all do back home. And this is an introduction to airbrushing. It's an introduction to airbrushing that's been written by our in-house painter and airbrushing advocate, Mark. Now, you'll find also a lot of support for this online, so check out our YouTube channel to see more of his airbrushing antics. And the first thing that Mark points out is do not fear the airbrush. It's not just good for vehicles and tanks, it's good for everything else in between, and it's great for eating into your lead mounting. So one of the angles on this article is the fact that if you want to get figures from under your bed or out of your shelves and onto the tabletop, then the airbrush is a great and friendly tool for making sure that happens. He's also got several exercises in there to hone your airbrushing skills, and he talks about the different ways you can use an airbrush, the different cones on an airbrush that are suitable for different types of figures. So everything you need to know about using an airbrush if you're a first timer. We'll follow that up in later issues with other things that Mark's done using an airbrush to show you that it is a great tool. Another little article that we come to next is Return to Padawan, which is one of our regular favourites, David Bickley, who returns to his imagination setting in colonial India and tells you about how he's been gaming in there and how he's gone about collecting figures for it. Another Wargames Workbench article next is Overcoming Scale Aversion. So another thing not to be scared of is 6mm figures, and Gareth Beamish tells us how he went about painting his 6mm samurai collection. Key part of his mantra is that 6mm is about painting the unit and not the individual. So don't be thinking that you've got to paint thousands and thousands of individual figures. You're painting units of figures when it comes to 6mm. Okay, right, next up we have the Silver Bayonet Society Part 1. Now we're very excited here at Wargames Illustrated about the release of this new set of rules from Osprey, written by Joseph A. McCulloch, one of our favourite Wargames designers at the minute, and James from Wargames Illustrated takes an in-depth look at the rules from a GM's point of view, because James has got big plans for a campaign for Silver Bayonets that we're all looking forward to, and along with a look at the rules and how they work, he's put GM notes all along the way to tell you about what he's going to be doing with the rules going forward and the campaign that he's going to be running for us here at Wargames Illustrated that you can read all about in forthcoming issues of the magazine. Then we've got Perfectly Painted Faces. Perfectly Painted Faces is by Callum France, who's another marvellous painter. You've perhaps seen in Wargames Illustrated before, and you'll be seeing a lot more of him in forthcoming issues as well. Callum talks about the tricky bit of a figure, which is the face, that should always look important, and he goes about telling you about how you should paint the face on Wargames figures, including avoiding the uncanny valley, which is very scary, and you can read all about it in that article there. Next up, we have a bit of heavy World War II history for you in the form of Stalin's Polish Army. A look at the history behind and the gaming potential of the LWP, the Polish People's Army, who fought for the Soviet Union during the Second World War. So we've got included in there uniform information, gaming inspiration, and figure availability, just about everything you need to know about gaming with this quite different World War II force. Our next article, again in our Wargames Workbench theme, is Building Breeze Home Part 2. So you will have seen Building Breeze Home Part 1 in the previous magazine, obviously, and following on from that, Callum France tells us a bit more about how you put together this marvellous looking building, which you may recognise from the Elder Scrolls computer game, but even if you don't, like me, then you can just build it anyway and make it look ace on your medieval/fantasy tabletop. Right, next up we have Raven's Revenge, again following on from an article in last month's magazine in which we interviewed the guys behind the 7TV's new rules release, 7TV Fantasy. We've got an exclusive scenario for 7TV Fantasy in the form of Raven's Revenge, which was inspired by the 80s TV fantasy cult classic Hawk the Slayer. So if you're a child of the 70s or 80s like me, you'll be very familiar with Hawk the Slayer, and you've been waiting for years and years to be able to game him. Well, you can by using this article here. Right, up next we've got Painting Victory's Achaemenid Persians, and this is Mark makes a welcome return to the pages of the magazine after being in earlier talking about airbrushing, and he's using his airbrush to paint some of these new, rather marvellous Victrix new mounted Persians. But it's not just all about the airbrush, so don't worry if you've not been convinced by that yet, because he does get his bristle brush out as well and shows you how to paint the Persians in a marvellous fashion, so you can have yours looking as marvellous as his do at the end of the article. Next up, we've got another article inspired by last month's theme, and this one is called Clockwork and Lace. It's been written for us by one of our favourite contributors, Pete Brown, exploring the concept of 18th century fantasy gaming. All Pete's doing here really is twisting the sort of lace 18th century period and adding in a bit of gothic horror inspired by such things as Jonathan Strange and Sleepy Hollow. He's telling you where you can get the figures to do that and how you can add those elements into your games, including finishing up with a mini scenario called The Beast Must Die, which again is just twisted historical, really, involving a wolf or potentially a bit of a werewolf. So that, I think, is not the last article in the magazine. There's always more. That's the great thing about Wargames Illustrated. The last article is a theme article, and it's Defending Rorke's Drift. Now, I don't know if you've heard of it, but there was a little film back in the 60s called Zulu. And inspired by that film, Barry Evans has created this rather lovely diorama which uses the Warlord Games British Line Infantry redcoats to create something that looks a bit like that. It's fantastic, and it could look really good on your wargaming tabletop, or it could look equally good on your shelf to show off to your friends. Follow all his instructions on how you create it, and you'll have something that looks great and something that looks a bit like this in the finished pictures here. I think that's it. It is it, apart from some adverts from some people who you should buy stuff from because they're all really good. Right, so that is it. That's Wargames Illustrated Wi407. Well, it's the November 2021 issue of the Wargames Illustrated magazine. We hope you like it as much as we do. Thanks very much.
This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.